Now I'm going to put you a bit on the spot. You've been involved in the St. Jude's Hospital project for some years now. And I think you delivered to the government of Saint Lucia in 2025, I think it was late November or early December, what would be the St. Jude's Hospital. Now, you have been involved in engineering, building for many years. Why did you go back to the old St. Jude's? Why don't we go forward with what is referred to as the box, which was a purpose-built facility which St. Lucians could have benefited from? In Saint Lucia, roughly 80% of the GDP is generated by the private sector, clear evidence of the economy's fundamentally private sector-driven character. Supporting indigenous firms, encouraging investment, and strengthening domestic productive capacity are not ideological preferences, they are economic imperatives. Saint Lucia offers several examples of local enterprises shaping national development, but few are as visible, as consequential as the Rayneau Gajadhar group of companies led by Rayneau Gajadhar. Widely regarded as one of the country's most prominent business groups, it has become a central force in the island's construction and industrial supplies ecosystem, with a footprint extending across the Eastern Caribbean and now into Asia. From construction and quarrying to industrial products, equipment rentals, and logistics, the group's expansion mirrors the broader economic trajectory of Saint Lucia. Its story raises larger questions about the balance between state and enterprise, about national capacity, and about what it truly means to build infrastructure and institutions in a small economy like ours. Today, we turn to the man behind the enterprise, not simply to understand his success, but to interrogate what his journey reveals about ambition, resilience, and the future of our economy in Saint Lucia. Welcome to the 1461 podcast.
This podcast is brought to you by IBS, Harbor Club, Tropical Solar, and 1461 Enterprise, distributors of the world's best coffees.
Welcome to the 1461 podcast. Today we have a very special guest. Most of you will know him. He's Rayneau Gajadhar, a construction and industrial magnate in Saint Lucia. Welcome, Mr. Gajadhar.
Thank you very much for inviting me to your show.
So, I think everybody knows your story. Saint Lucians, by and large, know who you are. They see your name on your vehicles and equipment, and they see quite a bit of the substantial body of work that you've done in Saint Lucia already in construction. But you also have a very interesting story to tell, an interesting background. You've come from humble beginnings, and you've come from, let's say, difficult circumstances, and you've made a man of yourself, as they say in the parlance. Tell us a little bit about those formative years and what challenges you may have encountered, which has resulted in the person that we now see before us.
That's a short question, but we have a very, very long answer.
Oh, we have time.
But what we're going to do is compact it as much as I can. Challenging, you said we came from a challenging time. And those words will always remain with us in life. At any point in time in life, it is a challenging time. And again, it depends on how we look at it. For me, it was not a challenging time. For me, it was just a time that was good, and a time that I could have seen as a challenge or seen as an opportunity. It just happened that I chose to see that time as an opportunity. And what I did was look for what it is that were the opportunities to take advantage of it. And basically, that is what I did.
But with that, looking at the positive side of things and seeing opportunities and challenges, I like that. But you had to have made a lot of personal sacrifices. You don't come from that upbringing to where you are without personal sacrifices. What personal sacrifices you had to make along the way?
The reality is, for anything that you want to achieve, you must make a sacrifice. And in most of all of the cases, it's a personal sacrifice. So whether it be that you want to be educated and pass an exam, the sacrifice would be that, though I spend hours in my books and continue learning and cramming and ensuring that I pass the exam. For me, it was not about education. I was never really interested in education. I was always interested in making money. So what I did, all my focus was on the things that I had to do to make money.
You had no personal time. Every day, every night, you were thinking about your what venture. Because I heard a story. I heard you sold ice cream. I heard you were a technician. I heard you were into flowers, and now construction.
Well,
what along that journey?
What prompted me that way?
What prompted
Actually,
you?
so basically, what it is in your thinking, you have something which is called a small vision, and my small vision was only about making money. And why making money? Because that is what I saw at the time that would put you to a level and a place where you can be comfortable. What happened to me during the period of time that was happening is I developed a bad habit. And that bad habit, it was extremely difficult for me to break.
What was that habit?
My bad habit became work. So what happened was...
You're never allergic to work. So work is something you had like.
Work became something that I liked. So even up to now, even at my age, the question is, why is it that I am here? Why is it I have done well? And why is it that you continue to do? So if I even had to ask myself that question, that answer would be stupid, because you would ask me, do you need it? And my answer is, what can I do with it? But what has happened is I developed that bad habit and I just have to continue.
But you must say that in your formative years, you would have seen conditions or lived a reality which drove you. Because sometimes when you come from a particular background, whether it be good, bad, or indifferent, that drives you to a different outcome. What was it specifically in your background which said to you, I have to work hard, I have to make something of myself because I don't want that circumstance? And along that journey, did you have any role models? Anybody you looked up?
The thing about it is, what drove me, it's not anything one specific, because at different points in your life, where you are to where you want to, where the next stage you want to be would be something small that took you to the next stage. And once you got to the next stage, it would be something else. What was very, not surprising, but what confused me was, at that time, my dream was to make $1,000 a day. So that was like what I was working for. So I worked towards that for a long time.
When did you make it?
Making $1,000. I don't remember the time I made it. But for me to make $1,000 a day, it means I had to gross a minimum of $300,000. But that I was never prepared for that. I always thought that, I can make that. But for me to actually make the money, I had to gross so much more and put so much effort. So at that time, that became as a big surprise to me and my mind, because of how I saw it.
So what's your target now?
My
You won't tell. You won't
No.
say. But let's go back to the background, because I find it very fascinating, that journey that you've been on. Tell me, you had any family influence, like mother, father, cousin, friend, and you saw that person and said, you know what, Rayneau Gajadhar will be like that person one day?
Not really family per se. But, there's so many other people. So at my time, you had the Judas, the Gajadharis, the JQ Charles. There were a number of other people that were doing well at the time in Saint Lucia. And, for you to do well, you must look at people that are doing well in the field that you'd like to do. And one of the things that I learned from a very long time ago was, every single person who was over 50, what made them do well was buying property. Right? It was not nice car, and it was not fancy clothes, and it was not going to parties. What they did and invested was buying land.
So when did you start buying land?
I started buying land a long time ago. Right?
Do you remember the first piece you bought?
I don't even remember the first piece I bought, but that is what I focused on. So what I did is I bought land and I used it as leverage for the bank for you to get additional loans.
Okay.
And sometimes I bought land in areas where nobody would ever dream that a piece of land would be sold. But 30, 40 years later is when it became useful. At the time, yes, it may have taken cash flow out of you where you could have multiplied it. But there was a balance that had to be taken as to whether I do the real estate investment or whether I do an investment that is going to do an instant turnover.
Return.
So I took a balance during that time.
Now, question that I want to ask now in Saint Lucia, and I'm speaking to particularly younger people in our audience who want to purchase a piece of land. I mean, the prices now is really a seller's market because the prices are extortionate in some cases, $25, $30,
No,
$40.
I disagree with you.
Based on the salaries, you disagree?
No, I disagree
Because the
with you on
salaries
that.
in Saint Lucia aren't significantly high to support
No,
those.
there was never a time in life, in anyone's life, where the salaries supported what people wanted to do. And there will never be a time when the salaries will support what you want to do.
So sacrifice.
Right. So it goes back to what is your priority and what am I working towards to? Right? So we cannot have it all one time. So we need to make those decisions on what we invest in and what we are looking forward to. The other question is, right, am I living for today or am I living for tomorrow? And what I've realized is the generations, as the generations go, people only want to live for today. They have no tomorrow in their minds. And, you know, it's not like just to us, but it has been a long time where people's choices are what brings them to where they are 40 and 50 years later.
So we're going to go to a quick break. Fascinating first part of this discussion. We've learned a lot about Rayneau's earlier years. On the second part of this break, when you come back from this break, we'll be focusing more on the business aspect and how he achieved such great success. See you after the coffee break.
Coming up after the break, more with our guest.
I feel good. I knew that I would. I feel good. I knew that I would. So good. I got you. Wow, I feel nice. Sugar spot.
To experience the benefits of a tropical solar water heating system, call 453-1868 in Castries or 454-6344 in Beaufort.
Welcome back. So we've learned a little bit about your formative years. Now we want to double click on Rayneau today. So you are a man of huge responsibility. You have a number of people working for you, I'm sure numbering in the hundreds. You are involved in many national projects which are really consequential for St. Lucia's future development. Stress. How do you manage stress?
I've been trying to get some for a very long time. I hear the word, I hear people talk about it, but I've never experienced
So
it.
you say that with all of these responsibilities, you have people who are relying on you for their employment. You have governments and institutions and private sector for delivering high quality, construction. How do you manage with those responsibilities and the stress that comes with it?
But there's no stress that comes with it. There are situations that arise, but it's not stress. Stress is something you bring onto yourself. But I have not been able to do that because I have not been able to find out what stress is. So I continue to deal and focus on the situations and deal with it.
So one step at a time, one foot in front of the other.
That's what you have to do.
All
You
right.
deal with the situations, and if sometimes you could deal with them together, you deal with them together. But I hate, but I think this is more mental than
Real.
reality.
Good observation. Now, we always hear about and see your successes. There must have been some failures along the way. Tell us about those failures and what you've learned from them.
I may have been lucky, but I have never ever had a failure. However, I've had a few very expensive lessons,
Okay.
but they were not failures. They were just expensive lessons.
So
Now,
it's about perspective.
no, it's perspective one, but the reality is, remember, I never spent time and money going to school to hear from other people's mistakes. I would only do that en passant. So sometimes you would take a risk that did not bring the reward, but it was never a failure. It was just an expensive learning lesson.
Understood. Perspective is important. I think many people see the outcome or processes, the outcome of these lessons, the outcome of those things which you've gone through to become the person you are today. But they never see the difficulties and the challenges. So it's good to know that you see those difficulties, those challenges as not failures, but as things which will make you stronger for the future.
And better. Right. And we're not cutting you short here, but I always tell people and use the analogy, right? When you were young, did you ever pick mangoes in anybody else's tree? Or did you ever go and pick mangoes in a tree? And your answer generally would be yes.
Absolutely.
And then I asked, did you ever think about who planted that tree? How long did it take for it to grow and bear fruit? But the only thing that you see is the
mango.
fruit.
Yeah.
You never ever look at where it came from and how it got here so that I can stone it and get fruit. And this is reality with most people.
In this Instagram generation, YouTube, everyone sees the outward evidence of success. Sometimes it's not real success. They don't see what effort and lessons. I was going to say failure, but I'm learning from you. What effort and lessons which have been learned along the way to get to where those people are. Let's switch gears a little bit. Gajadhar is a name which is synonymous with the Indian Saint Lucian. What affinity do you have to your background? Because I think it would be fair to say you have East Indian heritage. How do you see yourself and your identity as a Saint Lucian? As a Saint Lucian or as a Saint Lucian Indian? How do you see yourself?
Because of where I grew up, how I grew up, my father was the forestry officer, and we lived in the middle of the island, which is on the top of the Badalil. So I grew up on the top of the Badalil.
On the top of there's the housing?
There's one little house there.
And
So
that was yours?
that's where we grew up. It's government's house,
Okay.
but because my father was in charge, that's where he lived. We never had the opportunity to live among the Indian people, which was more in forest here, which is where my dad came from, and my mom was from Miku. So, but we never had the opportunity to live within the communities of the Indians. So we grew up, my family grew up between my dad's workers, who were all of African descent. So we grew up, and that's all I knew. So the food that I eat, our mannerisms, the way we behave, it's all based on what we learned growing up from the African people. And this is where we are. So I don't even consider myself
Indian or
an
East
Indian or an East Indian or a Syrian or anything. I'm a Saint Lucian.
Good.
And I'm a Saint Lucian with a mix of,
Indian,
the different.
African.
Yes.
Very good. I think having this sort of ethnic or cultural definitions is very important makes us a more diverse country, but holding on to that definition too tightly can, rob us of understanding that we're Saint Lucians at the end of the day. Let's go on to a different part of your story. You've started with your formative years, dealt with stress and how you deal with failure. Let's look at more closely at your success. How do you define your success now? How do you see yourself? Do you see yourself as reaching the ultimate level of success? Do you see yourself in the middle of the road, the beginning of the road, or are you at the end of your journey?
Actually, in terms of success and is relative to where you wanted to be or want to be. It could be as small as just passing an exam and I was successful, or it could be as big as, I want to employ 20,000 people, right? It varies in what your mindset is. For me, every year that passes, the level of my success or what I want to succeed in is different. And it's different for many reasons. One is because of the capacity that I have. And number two, the actual situation that I am in or the country is in. In terms of business success, I never felt that I could have gotten to where I wanted to be just staying in Saint Lucia. So what I had to do, because the Caribbean is small, what I had to do was to go out to all of the islands. I'm in the construction industry, and what has happened is the construction industry in all our islands is based on the election cycle. So for the first 3 years of every government, there's very little to nothing doing. And the last 2 years is when you get work. So I have moved out and I have hoped that the election cycle between the islands would have changed. So, when there's no work in one country, you do it in the other one. And this is what I did and moved out. In doing that, I realized there's still many restrictions. And the restrictions that we have in our region is supervision, management, and our population throughout the region is very small. So there's very, very few things that you can do that will encompass the wide population. And I looked at China, but I did that back in 2012. China, I saw what I was growing, and I decided to set up an operation in China.
You have an operation in China?
So I have a fair-size operation in China. And then I moved to India. And I have a smaller operation in India, but it's growing.
When you say an operation, you're talking about you employing
I am employing
Chinese?
hundreds of people in China.
Doing what?
I have a factory doing steelworks.
Wow.
So we do crushers, we do screens, we do nails, we do
And is it for the
wheelbarrows.
domestic Chinese market, or are these exported?
It's both of them. So we service both the domestic Chinese market, but we concentrate more on export, because exporting in China, you get a lot more benefits from the government.
So if I mean to ask you, how many people would you roughly say you employ in Asia between India and China?
We have just over 500.
Wow.
Just over. But in the Caribbean region, I have 1,600 and over.
Wow.
Right?
Do you have any capital controls in terms of repatriating your income earned over there, or how does it work?
Well, actually, there's very little need to do that, because I continue to expand in each of the jurisdictions I am. So there's really no need for me to bring it back. However, in bringing it back, because we have the opportunity for us to purchase stuff overseas and say send to the Caribbean islands, it is actually done that way rather than transferring money. So, we buy stuff in each of the areas and we ship it across.
So this is very fascinating. We'll come back to this after the break. Join us after the break for this really fascinating discussion about what Rayneau is doing, not only in Saint Lucia and the wider Caribbean, but also in Asia. See you after the break.
Coming up after the break, more with our guest.
power, palm too cold.
Alexa, where can I find a solar water heater?
Let me find out. I'm only seeing one, Tropical Solar. They have the best solar water heater, providing hot water, rain or shine.
Is there one big enough for my entire family?
Actually, Tropical Solar offers 35 to 85 gallon systems, perfect for any home.
How quickly can I get one?
The hot water system is installed within 24 to 48 hours of purchase. They are located in View Fort, Castries, and Rosie Lay.
Thanks, Alexa. Jale.
Welcome back. Would you say that there is significant growth opportunities still in the China and exporting from China, or you think you've seen the best parts of the business cycle there?
No, I think between China and India, China might be only 30% of the opportunity that it has, and India is only about 10%.
Wow! So
but India is growing very fast. China has done extremely well and will continue to do well for the next 50 years minimum.
With respect to China, is that, if I may ask, is it a joint venture or is it a wholly owned?
It's a wholly owned by me.
Yes. And India, tell me, what are you doing in India?
India, we're doing a lot of IT type stuff. So we have a lot of people employed actually doing work for the region.
Okay.
Now, we've started off doing some export out of India. It's not as big as I would like. So we have a warehouse down there, and we're bringing a lot of stuff, and we're exporting out of India because India is a growing market. And the prices of getting a lot of stuff out of India is actually better than China. And in many cases, the quality in India is better than in China as well.
So two things. You're doing a service. You have a services-based company which does IT. When you say IT, are you looking at contact centers, call centers?
No, IT stuff meaning anything to do with building websites. We do a lot of accounting stuff up there. So I have about 25 people up there working in an office that does a lot of work.
So back office?
No, we actually do drawings as well. So you're not the engineers for doing drawings, mechanical and electrical stuff, anything in that field.
And the exports, the physical traded goods, what goods do you trade out of India?
Well, right now we do a lot of electrical items out of India, but we take a lot of stuff out of India now, a lot, very, many different things. Even furniture comes out of India now.
Oh, and do you see an opportunity for further growth and expansion in India?
Well, India hasn't even really started. So India has a lot of opportunity. But what it is, like most people, they always wait for it to come for them to take advantage of it. So now what I've done is to take ahead. And I know in the next 5 years, 10 years' time, India is going to explode.
So give our audience a little heads up. Where does Rayneau see himself in India? Deeper in the IT supply chain, or is it you're going to diversify? What are your thoughts on India?
No, for me, I always try to focus on things that are non-perishable and can't fall apart and you don't lose too much. That is why I've chosen a lot of the construction items. When I go into construction items, 99% of them, they do not spoil. So even if you do not sell them now,
you could keep them.
You could keep them for another 2 years.
They call it long shelf life.
Yes, they have very long shelf lives. So I tend to go into that because I take a lot of risks into buying stuff at good prices and waiting for time for us to make the money off of it as well.
If you look at your portfolio between Saint Lucia, the rest of the Caribbean, I understand you're in Guyana, and now Asia. Where would you say? How would you say your interests are? What's the balance of your interests? You have most of it in Saint Lucia, most externally. How do you see your balance of your interests?
It's not really a balance of interest. It varies and it depends on the time. The reality is the Caribbean, it is easier to make more profit. But in the Asian countries, you make 25 times the volume or 100 times the volume. So your markups are very small in those places because of the competition. And, in the Caribbean, it's much different because, there's nothing in the Caribbean that anyone can say has a competition.
So a little birdie told me that you have a significant opportunity or investment in Guyana. Walk us through what you're doing in Guyana. What's the opportunity there?
We started off quite a while. At one time, we were the dealers for the Hyundai equipment. That we're no longer anymore. But we have concrete plants, and we're doing some stuff there. Not as much as I would like to do, because over the years, as Guyana continued to do well, Guyana has gone short of workers. So one of the major issues that we have in Guyana is getting workers to get the jobs done. And I will not take a job that I cannot deliver.
Entering markets like Guyana and Trinidad, Trinidad is a good example, has been notoriously difficult, even if you're a CARICOM national. How has it been for you to enter those new markets like Guyana?
Guyana was not difficult to enter. Guyana allows you to enter. What's difficult about Guyana is the competition.
It's a low competition now.
It's a major competition in Guyana. And, you have to go with the flow. The thing is, where do you put your emphasis? And for me, I put my emphasis where it's more profitable at the time. So, it will vary depending on where you put your energy and your time.
So outside of Guyana, you are in Dominica. At least I know you did a hospital in Dominica. You've been in St.
No, so we have a full-time operation in Grenada, St. Vincent, Saint Lucia, Dominica, Antigua. We're in Montserrat, in Guyana.
Wow.
We're in China, in India, and over the last year and a half, we're in Saudi Arabia.
Wow. So what are you doing in Saudi Arabia?
Construction as well.
Wow. Impressive. You have a pretty big market in the Dominican Republic. I know CARICOM, and within the framework of CARIForum, there should be an opportunity, I would believe, for the export of services, construction-related services, to the Dominican Republic. Have you ever looked at the Dominican Republic?
I have not looked at the Dominican Republic. And you see, I have to choose where I go. Dominican Republic, the market there is a lot different. Guyana is different. And Trinidad, you need to look at it, what you're doing, why you're doing, how you're doing. And I try to focus on the things that people do not have the capacity to do. So once I focus on things that people have the capacity to do, it lends itself to be making a little more profit on those items. So I try not to compete with the normal, ordinary market, but look for those specific opportunities.
So earlier on, you said many years ago, your objective was to make $1,000 a day. Within the context of your understanding of business success, what do you think business success as you expand means for you? Like, what do you see? Where do you see Rayneau Gajadhar group of companies?
The only success that I see now for me, the only success, there's nothing else that I will see as success, is once I can keep my workers always working. That is the only thing on my mind. Remember, I have had workers for over 30 years working with me. Maybe more than 30 years, right? And those are people that have had children, and those children are now working with me. For me, that's success. Going forward, it is how do I always keep those people employed? Because those are people, their livelihoods and their families depend on me. So success for me is how I can continue keeping those people employed and how I can add to the number that I contribute to.
And how many people do you have working for you in Saint Lucia?
Saint Lucia, maybe about 800.
Okay, we're going to shift gears slightly, a little bit, and we're going to actually do this after the break. When we come back from the break, we're going to speak about one of the most significant construction projects in Saint Lucia, which you've been involved in. And of course, it'll be really interesting to get your insights about the St. Jude's Hospital. So after this break, you're going to hear some really hot takes and interesting perspectives from Mr. Gajadhar about St. Jude's.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Oh, yes. Yes.
To experience the benefits of a tropical solar water heating system, call 453-1868 in Castries or 454-6344 in Viewfort.
Thank you for joining us again. So, you've had an opportunity to explain your background, where you are, your growth. Now I'm going to put you a bit on the spot. You've been involved in the St. Jude's Hospital project for some years now. And I think you delivered to the government of Saint Lucia in 2025, I think it was late November or early December, what would be the St. Jude's Hospital. Now, you have been involved in engineering, building for many years. Why did you go back to the old St. Jude's? Why don't we go forward with what is referred to as the box, which was a purpose-built facility which St. Lucians could have benefited from? Why going back? Why not go forward?
I think I went forward. I went forward with what was given to me because I'm a contractor and I can only do what was given to me.
But surely you have influence. Surely you are someone who would be listened to. Surely you could have said, hey guys, this is a better option for the country. This is a better opportunity to give St. Lucians a facility which over the next generation could satisfy the medical health needs of the country. You surely could have done that.
Actually, perception is much different from reality.
Tell me.
And the perception is that I do have influence. But the only influence I actually have is on my workers and what we have to do. I really have no much influence on politicians and the decisions they make. I stick to my corner, and that's all I do. Otherwise, if I do differently, then there's compromise with my business.
Understood. Now, if you were the one to make the decision, what would you have done?
I cannot say because I do not have all the information for me to make that kind of decision. That would be me just talking out of the way, whatever I think it is.
Rayneau,
making decisions like that needs a lot of information
Rayneau,
for you to make those decisions.
You've been in both facilities. You've assessed both facilities. You're a man you've taken risks. You're in China, you're in India. You're a brilliant man, a good businessman, for sure. What would you have done? You must have an opinion on what you, Rayneau Gajadhar, would have done having been presented with these two options.
What I would have done and whether the government was in a position to spend the money to do what I would have done is different.
Tell me what you'd have done. Walk me through what you'd have done. We're getting somewhere now.
I would have given up that new building.
Given it up?
I've given it up. I would have given it up to an outside entity that would develop it into a private hospital.
To compete with the public hospital?
No, you don't compete, you complement. So you see it as competition, I see that complementary. You see, government now needs to start doing the basic minimum that they should do and allow private sector to take over once you go above a certain level. This lends itself perfectly to doing that.
So do you think what motivated, and again, 1461, we non-partisan, we speaking to the issues, but I want to interrogate this specific development project. I think it's important and I think our viewers want to hear. What motivated that decision? Was it policy or politics?
I would not know. I know that we were given the opportunity to bid the job. We bidded the job and we executed and delivered. If you ask me what motivated them to give me the job is, I believe that they wanted it delivered.
On time.
And they also knew that I was the only one capable of delivering it in the time they wanted. Let's be clear, and let me take that little opportunity. I was given 2 years to deliver the project, and I delivered it in 1 year.
Wow.
1 year and 1 month.
Wow.
Could have been delivered in less time, But we delivered in 1 year and 1 month.
How many beds do you have there?
I do not know outright. All I know, we bought maybe over 200 beds we bought
Very
for
good.
the project.
So we have a hospital which should have been a box which should have been a hospital. We have St. Jude's, and of course I think the people of Saint Lucia, people of the South, want some reprieve, some relief, and of course compliments to you for delivering the project on time or ahead of schedule, and that speaks to your own business efficiency. It's not something which is typically found in all sectors. What would you say from what do you say are the major inefficiencies in the construction sector? Is it access to labor? Is it access to capital? Well, what are the biggest inefficiencies? Is it the port? What are the biggest inefficiencies that you encounter in terms of running your business, expanding your business, and creating more opportunities for yourself and those people who rely on you?
The biggest inefficiency in the construction sector is the consultants. And governments and people have chosen to go to consultants to manage their projects who are engineers that they use to be managers. This is one of the greatest problems that we have had.
So how do you separate the governments don't have specific competence in managing specific projects, particularly if it's out of the scope of the government day-to-day operations. So you need to have a third party to oversee the work being done by professionals like yourself.
But you see, you're taking an engineer to be a manager. An engineer is an engineer. An engineer is not a manager. And that is the mistake we are making. We are putting square pegs in round holes.
So walk me through this. You're saying that you need more project managers and less consultants who may clash with the contracted party in terms of design and implementation of the project.
That's correct. You need people who can manage and deliver.
Don't you find sometimes those consultants add value or at least could save the government money? Because if there is no consultant, then who therefore is keeping an eye on the project on behalf of the government?
No, you must have a manager, somebody to manage the project and somebody that you hold responsible for delivering the project. What we have is we have consultants. That is people that get paid for a name. How many times in the history can you say that a consultant has added value to a project?
So you haven't found that? You have no example of that?
Very, 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 very few.
But you in your business have supervising consultants, don't you?
No, I don't have supervisors. I have supervisors. But you see, the wood consultants is something that is derived from giving somebody a job, pay them big money for doing nothing.
Well, there has been a book recently by this lady who I had a good pleasure meeting, Makatu, I think her name is, which really spoke in a very, let's say, not the most flattering way about consultants. So I think that also feeds into this impression that those people who are actually working and delivering goods and services should be the ones ultimately responsible for delivery, not someone who sits on a desk somewhere far away and thinks of what could be done better in the field. You've spoken in the past about some of our skills limitations. You've spoken about the fact that Saint Lucia, it's difficult to get not only laborers, but specific trades persons. Where are we on that?
We are still the same place. So years and years ago, right, I have always made these statements, right? We need to concentrate on training people to be skilled workers. Carpenters, masons, plumbers, electricians, right? All of those skills that AI will not be able to take. At that time, I never even knew that there was something called AI. AI came in way after that I advocated for us to continue training our people. We continuously wanted our students to pass an exam that was an academic exam. Now, we can see all of those academics will fall apart because AI is already doing a far better job than any one of them can do with all the doctorates and all the exams they have passed.
So, but I'll say this to you, and I'm sure you know, in some of the world's leading economies in Germany, apprenticeships are huge. So it's not only the academic, but learning a skill, learning a trade. Switzerland, again, is another place where tradespersons are very valued. I think in Saint Lucia and the broader OECS, we put a premium on academic outcomes, and specifically those outcomes which are in the services rather than apprenticeships and training for tradespersons. Why do you think that's the case?
Because it came from what I would say is the white man mentality that we wanted those white collar jobs. And for you to get the white collar jobs, you had to pass an exam. Never once, and even up to now in our government systems, there is no accountability for delivery. The only way you get a job is based on your educational documentation that you present.
What would you have done to ensure that that persons in the public service and those persons hired by the government are held accountable based on productivity levels and delivery?
It doesn't matter what I say, because it comes back down to the politicians that would just appease everybody.
Rayneau, surely you have a voice.
No, I have a voice, but my voice would not make a difference because I'm not in a position to make the difference. And the people that are in a position to make a difference is the ones that will ask for the accountability. Throughout the history of our region, how many people do you know that a government system has fired, dismissed because of poor productivity? Do you know what we do in our region? We take somebody who is poor at productivity and put them into another department just by shifting them around because we cannot work with them and deal with them. So they just continue in the system. This is what we have continuously been breeding. And it is only going to get worse because people are entitled. This level of entitlement that people have is what is going to kill us.
So less entitlement, more accountability, and I think for those of us listening carefully, more emphasis to be placed in the education system on training and capacity building in the trades. That's something that you advocate for.
It has always been that way. This is what has made us where we are today, right? And Saint Lucia and the Caribbean has never had the opportunity to take advantage of academic education. We never had that opportunity to take advantage. So have we ever been able to have a high-rise building with 2,000 people working for a bank, which is...
No.
We never had that opportunity.
So what do you say before we break? How do you bridge that gap? What specific would you say is important for us to get to the point where you could say, you know what? All the people I want, whether it's masons, plumbers, carpenters, I have the... What advice would you specifically give? Bringing people from outside? What would you suggest?
Bringing people from outside is one, that they need to help us. But if we look at history, if you look at the great New York City and the great London, it is all being run by foreigners. It is 95% foreigners running those so-called great places. I came from a background of Indians who came from India 150 years ago, right? And most Africans came from Africa to work in our region. The only reason you came here 500 years ago, 300 years ago, is to work. And what has happened is, with all the education that we have today, we cannot yet see the importance of allowing foreigners to come in to work and deliver for us, because we get too complacent in our countries, sit back, do nothing. We become entitled just because we're supposed to give a vote at the end of 5 years. We are not doing anything good for our people or for our country with that mentality.
Interesting take. So more competition will lead to better outcomes, more productivity.
No, it's not more competition because there's no competition. There's absolutely no competition.
What do you mean there's no competition in terms of labor?
If I were to ask you to get me 5 workers that is going to spend 14 days working continuously, you cannot find me 5 workers. Everybody wants to work for one day and a bounce and draw. Our region has become a bounce and draw.
What has created that entitlement?
It
was never like that before, you know?
No, it was never like that before. But the successive change in governments are the ones that make those people entitled, create projects where they get paid for cleaning by the side of the road.
You pointing to politicians for that?
It is only politicians. We are directed by the politicians. And where we are now has nothing else to do with us. It has to do with our politics. It has to do with our leaders who say that direction is okay or that direction is not okay.
So the short-term programs which have been used historically to occupy the surplus labor to ensure that people are not without work, you would point to as contributing to that mentality?
No, let's clear it. That you said that it is the projects that they have created for surplus labor. Saint Lucia and the entire Caribbean, I mean every single island and every single one, I cannot find workers. So there's no surplus labor. What we have is an attitude of people just wanting to do very little and get a small wage. Nobody wants to work for the long run.
People want to have the benefits of being employed, but not make the necessary sacrifices.
No. And that is what has happened over the years. And politics is the one that has created it.
Now, I'm going to put you on the spot. If you had the power to change that, what would you do?
I've done many, many things.
Tell me.
And one of the things is to demand that every person over the age of 18 pays a tax to the government, whether it be $500 or $300, that if you're not working, you still have to pay it. And when you start working, that you pay it backwards. Because many people do not work because they don't have to work, right? And then what I see successive governments continue to do is to make you feel that they're entitled, that they have to get a house, and you have to clean the side of the road by the house, and you have to do everything for them.
What about contracts?
That all that is included. Nobody wants to be a worker anymore. Everybody wants to be a contract. And this is continuously being perpetuated, especially when elections come around, just to get a vote.
So you're saying to the politicians, and I assume on both sides, let's look at national development from a bigger perspective. Let's not look at those small political gains. Let's look at things more nationally and long term.
No, I'm not saying anything to politicians. I'm going with the flow with politicians. If I wanted to make that difference, I'd have gotten into politics as well.
Okay.
But I have stayed out of it.
You are Saint Lucian, though. You have a right.
I'm Saint Lucian.
You have a right.
I can have a view.
Advice.
But I know I have never been asked for that advice.
Very good.
And even if I gave the advice,
it wouldn't be good.
No, it takes that person to see and want to make that change.
Very good.
Right?
So we have here a really fascinating discussion about labor, challenges with tradespersons, and some of the challenges which are being faced and some of the solutions which could help to ensure that those skills are brought into the labor market. After the break, we'll have some closing remarks and we'll share some additional perspectives. See you after the break.
This podcast is brought to you by IBS, Harbor Club, Tropical Solar, and 1461 Enterprise, distributors of the world's best coffees.
Welcome back. In our final segment, we're going to ask Rayneau some off the beating track questions, irregular questions. The first one, Rayneau, what advice would you give to the 18-year-old Rayneau? If you could do it all over again, what do you know now that you'd love to tell 18-year-old Rayneau?
I should have taken a much bigger loan as my first loan. I was too careful at the time. So had I not been as careful, I would have done better. So I was very, very careful in the beginning. And later on, I didn't become careless. But what happened is the risk that I took.
The risk appetite was...
Yeah, it was much bigger.
But maybe you had too much to lose at the beginning. Now you have more flexibility.
No. It's not too much to lose because I I can never lose. From the where I started, it's impossible for me to lose because there's no way I can ever go back to where I
you came
was.
from.
Right?
But
I will always be better off than where I ever came from.
Fair point, fair point. Now, your name, of course, is everywhere. I don't think there's a Saint Lucian here or abroad who does not know who Rayneau Gajadhar is. How do you deal with public scrutiny? People are always, is it Rayneau doing that contract? Is it Rayneau doing that building? You know, how do you deal with public scrutiny?
You call it public scrutiny, but I call it advertisement. So I get a lot of people marketing me, a lot of free marketing.
So you're like Donald Trump, you believe that any publicity is good publicity?
No, not generally, but what happens in my case, I think the marketing I get from people is more good marketing than negative marketing.
Of course.
You'll always get one or two people who do not understand it and will try to throw it off course. But the reality, I think we have had a lot of good marketing and people have worked with us and like us throughout the region. Nowhere can I say that I've had a problem.
So you, by all accounts, successful businessman, construction magnate, what outside of business would you point to as being a legacy that you want to point to? Outside of business, your business success, what are the things that you're most proud of?
I'm proud that I was able to give work and employ people continuously from the time they started working. Very, very few people have I fired. Very, very few. And, you know, most people leave instead because they cannot meet the requirements that I have. But I always want to make sure that people that start working with me could know that they have a lifetime job.
Excellent. Now, we've spoken about your personal accomplishments. Now, let's look at the country. Let's look at Saint Lucia. Looking forward, if you were to be given a pen and you were to design a blueprint for Saint Lucia's infrastructural transformation over the next 20 years, what would that look like?
Saint Lucia would become Hong Kong.
Wow.
Why Hong Kong? Saint Lucia is 4 hours away from North America and 4 hours away from South America. Why isn't Saint Lucia the hub of the financial sector of our region?
So all transnational business
should be
Saint
here.
Lucia.
So you only have 4 hours to fly. I fly 5, 8 hours and 13 hours for me to go to Hong Kong. And the only reason I go to Hong Kong is to do financial business. Whereas that could have been done in Saint Lucia.
Why has the financial services sector not allowed, and you know, it's something which I've been thinking about, transnational business, if you're exporting petrochemicals or minerals from Africa and into the US or to China, Saint Lucia is a good place.
Saint Lucia is a good place, but one of the things is, you know, it takes someone that really wants to make it happen and go for it.
But we had it for some time and it has not blossomed. The financial services sector has not delivered.
It has not blossomed because the governments at the time did not take the risk that was necessary for it to blossom. We are being managed or directed by the US and the EU, and nobody has taken it on for us to make sure that we move out of there. Why is Hong Kong doing well? Why can't we do the same that Hong Kong did? And it's not just Hong Kong for the financial services. There are many other things that we could be doing. Saint Lucia is one of the more beautiful places that you could go. Why isn't Saint Lucia the haven for the richest of richest people to come and enjoy?
But we have to do the CIP program.
No, the CIP program is different, but there's so many other things that we could be doing. So, you know, but it takes somebody with a vision of 20 years that is going to be able to make it happen.
Do you see Saint Lucia becomes like Hong Kong? I like that thought. Do you see that person in Saint Lucia to lead us in that direction?
Yeah, me.
Rayneau Gajadhar for president of Saint Lucia. I love that. And on that hot note, we're going to go to our final break. But one last question. You have a grand vision undoubtedly you are successful by every measure. If you were to be emperor of Saint Lucia for one day, what would you do?
There's nothing much that you could do in one day.
But what would you do?
I never thought of that. It's not something that, and
There must be something that you say, if I had the power, tomorrow this would stop or tomorrow that would start. You have to know something which you would want to see done.
if I had to think of it,
Yeah.
one of the first things I'd do is to strike off 90% of the laws that we have in Saint Lucia that govern us, and only use 10% of it. We have books with laws that no lawyer and no judge has ever seen in their life, but it still remains in our books and not significant to our well-being.
So you would streamline it, get rid of things which make things a lot
I would
easy-
take 90% off of it.
a lot of regulations as well. Not only laws, but
That are
regulations.
not important.
Yeah. I think you'd all agree that this has been an absolutely fascinating discussion with one of St. Lucia's most prominent business persons. I have been personally enriched by this discussion, and I'm sure you too have as well. So see you on our next episode of 1461, where we will bring to you another interesting and fascinating personality. So see you next
This
time.
has been the 1461 podcast. Thanks for watching. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Spotify.